Hello children, good morning. We are going to start the third poem of the main course book Flamingo. The title of the poem is Keeping Quiet. It is written by the famous poet Pablo Neruda, who is a Nobel laureate. So let us study this poem, Keeping Quiet. The day of the modern man starts with hectic activity and closes up with utter tiresomeness. Caught in the rat race of today's hustle and bustle, people have little time for rest and relaxation. There is an appeal by the poet to keep quiet for a while because modern man is stressed and depressed. He appeals then to keep quiet for a while, and he feels that if everybody does like that, people will reflect what they are doing and they will stop doing all those wrong things, and it will be altogether different world. There is a mad rush all over the world. Everything seems to be racing at a breakneck speed, as if trying to catch up to something which keeps eluding them like a mirage. Today we are in the world where people are doing multitasking. So this is a rat race. There's a lot of competition. And because of this competitive world, there are a lot of challenges for this modern man. When he's facing those challenges, he wants to overtake all others. Man's frantic hurry has led him to confusion and chaos. So this world is in confusion and it has become chaotic world. So there is a disorder in this world. The insatiable greed for money. Lot of greed is there and he is never satisfied. For money and power has resulted in the loss of values. So today we are lost all moral values. So here the poet is emphasizing on morality. The rat race for money leads to excessive engagement with machines which hardly has any place for human values. So we are not concerned about values. We are not bothered about others. We are not concerned about all other human beings as well as wild animals. People call themselves as engaged in gainful pursuits. But gainful to whom? And to what degree? At this juncture, sitting back and reflecting on one's own life and activities has become mandatory for everyone who wants to have a meaningful life. So if you want to have a meaningful life, it is very important for you to sit back, relax and reflect on what you have been doing it. And if you reflect over that, probably will bring about a change in your life. Now let us study about this poet Pablo Neruda, who is a famous poet. Pablo Neruda is the pen name of the Chilean writer Neftali Ricardo Reis, or so are told. He was born on 12 July 1904 in the town of Parral, Chile. In 1920, he became a contributor to the literary journal Selva Austral under the pen name of Pablo Neruda, which he adopted in memory of Czechoslovak poet Jan Neruda. He wrote in a variety of styles, including surrealistic poems, historical epics, overtly political manifestos, a prose autobiography, and a collection of love poems, 20 love poems and a song of despair. His unique style was recognized in 1971 when he won the Nobel Prize for Literature. His poems are often passionate odes to love and nature. In 1974, his memoirs appeared under the title Confess I Have Lived. So I confess I have lived, which contains the updates to the last days of the poet's life. So let's go to the poem and let's study this poem. It is important to keep the author's history in mind when reading Keeping Quiet. Most of the poems that he wrote in his life show the toll that his political activities had taken on him. So he was a political activist. Keeping Quiet was written in an extremely difficult situation when he had to live underground for 2 years because he had protested against the restraint. Keeping Quiet was written and included in a collection of 68 poems that Neruda called XII in 1974. The main theme of all of these poems was the idea of having more peace and silence in one's life, which is exactly what Keeping Quiet is about. So how one can have peace and silence in one's life. Keeping Quiet could really be written to anyone and everyone. There is not a specific audience for the poem. However, the people that would be able to make the most out of Keeping Quiet would definitely be the people who feel overwhelmed by their busy life. So let's recite the poem. Now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. It would be an exotic moment without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would look at his earth hands. Those who prepared green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victories with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is about. I want no talk with death. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving, and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sad days of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Now I will count up to 12 and you keep quiet and I will go. In this poem, the poet has emphasized the need to introspect. So when you relax and keep quiet, you start introspecting and bring in the spirit of brotherhood among the people of the world. How all people can be united. How all people will have feelings of brotherhood. He wants people to stop talking and stop all movements symbolizing vegetation and restlessness till he counts 12, that is for a short period of time. So he says keep quiet for a short period of time. These moments of silence would be strange and exotic because in our mundane life we are working towards selfish goals regardless of the other requirements and emotions. Hence this sudden silence would give us an opportunity to introspect. Man would get an opportunity to realize how he is destroying nature and how he is harming himself. Then you realize how we are destroying nature, how we are self-centered, we are just thinking about ourselves. Futile wars against men and nature would be arrested. So it would stop the futile wars against man as well as nature, and a new feeling of unity would be experienced. The poet wants men to learn a lesson from the earth. The earth appears to be inactive, yet it is selflessly productive. Men too could be productive and progressive without any aggression, selfishness, and the urge for destruction. Now let us study these poems line by line. The poet says, now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. The number 12 is a word that signifies order and completion. So in the case of a clock, you will find there are totally 12 numbers. In these lines, the poet expects everyone who thrives in this world to observe a moment of stillness and silence. The poet involves the reader through the use of the word we. So he is addressing us, he is talking to us, he requests us to remain silent and for once not communicate with anyone. And he expects us to stop all our activities and experience and internalize the tranquility and peace of such a moment. The poem is a plea for peace from one who has seen the dire consequences of war and silence. Arms can also mean weapons, and moving arms here is reminiscent of the stock gestures of a dictator from the recent history. So arms, it can mean hands as well as it can mean weapons. A person without awareness in action would spread the same ignorance around. It is a vicious circle. This moment of complete inactivity would be an extraordinary, it would be a very strange, exotic moment, memorable or cherished moment. There would be no rush, there would be reduced industrial activities. Man would not have to cope with the fast pace of life. This would be a profound moment of bonding and togetherness. There would be complete relaxation of mind, body and soul. The poet claims that it would be an unusual and strange moment and all human beings would be united in a calm, yet strange and novel experience. The phrase sudden strangeness has been used to convey the importance of universal peace. All human beings live in the same world. They have never realized this togetherness for so many years because they have been preoccupied with their own progress. The poet talks about a metaphorical concept in these lines, saying that fishermen would not harm marine life. So there are many endangered species in the sea, particularly the whale. Cold sea denotes coldness of fishermen who do not bother about protection of sea life. And in moments of inactivity, they will not be able to disturb the sea animals. The fishermen could also stand for all types of predators and poachers. The sword gatherers would also stop to look at the callous hands that hurt due to this activity. They too would pause to think about their mindless activities and their effects. The sword gatherers could stand for the proletariat who are oppressed by all. Quoting specific cases, the poet says that during this phase of tranquility, during this stage of tranquility, fishermen would stop harming the whales, and that the men gathering sword would look at their hurt hands. So they will also reflect over themselves. Now here whales killing such innocent creatures. Now here it is referring to the environmental degradation, and here there are people among us who are not thinking about themselves. So these sword gatherers, let them think over themselves. Let them look at their injured hands. This refers to the men giving themselves a moment to self-introspection and living without hurting themselves. The poet feels that the whole speculation of wars and their destructive qualities would be negated during those moments of silence. Green wars refers to environment degradation caused by human activities. Wars with gases and fires refers to wars fought with nuclear and bio weapons. So wars with gases. So here it's a nuclear weapon that is being used nowadays in the war. Man may get the satisfaction of being victorious, but ironically wars leave behind no survivors. Those human beings who wage wars would be cleansed of all the muck and dirt from their minds. They would then walk about with other individuals and preach amity, brotherhood and harmony. They would do nothing to harm mankind or nature. In these lines, the poet talks about wars against humanity as well as the nature. So that's why it's referring to green wars. The poet says that no victory is achieved without the loss of life. And such a victory that has claimed the lives of innocent men is considered useless by the poet. Hence the poet warns the soldiers who have been killing and destroying so far to give it a rest, wear clean clothes without bloodshed, and walk peacefully with their brothers, so they'll be universal brotherhood and do nothing. The poet does not wish to advocate total inactivity. When he says keep quiet doesn't mean that you just remain quiet and without any work. It is not inactivity or silence which may be misunderstood as the poet's association with them. So he says inactivity is like death. Life continues to remain what we make of it. So when you are keeping quiet, when you are silent, when you are doing nothing, it is time for you to introspect. It is time for you to reflect over what you have been doing, how your brothers are in trouble, to think about endangered species. It is not that the poet wants, but productivity through introspection. The poet doesn't want the readers to confuse this tranquility with total inactivity. Total inactivity implies cessation of life, which is another name for death. According to the poet, one needs to spend a few moments in silence, taking a break from the crazy hectic schedule and discover oneself. Our desire to achieve goals becomes single-minded, and despite that, we lose all perspective. The poet says, silence for a while might alleviate sadness in our lives. Quiet productivity in place of all activities is desirable. End of all activities does not mean death, but just a break from the monotony of a stressful life. So we are leading very stressful life, and if we take a break from all that, then it will be a time for you to think over what you have been doing, and definitely when you introspect, you will not again commit the same mistake what you have committed in the past. The poet says that the human beings have spent quite a long time wasting their lives on meaningless activities. So now he wants them to stop being selfish and should let this moment of silence interrupt their fast-moving, useless lives. He states that the humans are threatening themselves with death by not understanding themselves. So what is required is understanding. What is required is understanding of others, not to involve oneself in selfish goals, but think about the society, think of the world in which we live in. The poet in the last lines feels that we can learn a lesson from earth. So the earth itself will teach us the lesson. It can teach us how silence is productive. It appears calm and quiet, but is actually nurturing life. Things may die, but are reborn, and the cycle goes on because the earth brings forth new life. The poet appeals to all human beings to make an effort to keep inactive, quiet for some time in order to generate new life. It says the nature is a teacher to us. Look at the nature, what is there, though it is all silent, it is very productive. So, here the moment of introspection, when you are keeping quiet, the moment of silence is going to be very productive for the sake of future. The poet appeals everyone to keep quiet and reflect over the things that man has been doing, so that in future he will not commit the same mistakes which he has committed in the past, and definitely for man there will be bright future in case if man introspects and stops all those activities which he has been doing wrongly.